So hopefully you can now see a Casido window. And this is the example bundle that you will have been able to download off the Casido website on the UCL mooting page. And it gives you, it's a good place of where you might want to end up. So what I want to do is show you through Casido and its features with this example bundle, and then we'll go back and show you how you build it. So the basic Casido interface is here I have a screen where I can view my bundle. And what this is essentially it's taken all the documents in my bundle and it's pieced them all together and allows me to scroll through them all as if they were a single document. You can see I've got one window. Down in the bottom right here, I've got a split window button. If I click that, what it does is it splits the viewer into two windows, and that gives me two places to look at my bundle. I'm not actually opening up anything new. I'm just having a new way of looking at a new view of my bundle, as it were. Over here on the left-hand side, we have the pane users spend most of the time fiddling about with properly, which is what we call the index. And this is where you arrange your bundle and organize it. And we've got here a bunch of folders, which are the bold one items are marked in bold. And then inside we've got some documents. So here at the top, we've got the moot problem. And then we've got the skeleton argument. And then we've got the an extract from the Land Registration Act 2002, etc. And in tab B, we've got the town plan. And these just scroll into each other. And what you'll notice straight away is that to view a document, I don't click on the name. I click on the colored circle, and that's because if I want to view it in a different window, I can click on it in the different dots. So I can choose what to see in each window, and I can easily switch those around. And you'll see also that as I scroll through, the colored lozenge follows what I'm looking at. So I can scroll down the bundle and immediately see what document I'm in or what section I'm in. So this is where you build your file. Down here in the bottom left, we have the desk space. This is the area where new files and folders appear. So if I want to create a new folder, it'll appear here in the desk space. And we call it the desk space because it's this sort of unorganized space that goes next to your organized space. So the idea is, you've a new paper you want to look at. You don't know yet what it is or where you want to put it in your bundle. So it comes into the desk space and you can look at it. That's broadly it for the sort of, the layout of the application. This is what you're going to be looking at the whole time. The only other thing I'll mention is up here in the top left, we have a search form. So if I type in a search term, that will search my entire bundle and it will highlight. You can see here it's highlighted the word rules, and it will do that for the entire bundle. And it will give me a readout of the number of elements I have there. Bundle's obviously bigger than I thought it was. It's taking a while to search, but the first search always takes a bit of time. So with that said, what I now want to do is jump back in time, as it were, and look at how you might go around doing this with the simple bundle and look at how you would approach a moot with Casido. There we go, we had 1,300 results. So to do that, I'm going to open another Casido file. And the first thing really to remember about Casido is that it's not an online web service. This is a more old school app like Word, where you have a document that you can store on your computer somewhere. So I'm going to go to the File menu and choose Open Case. And I'm going to navigate to the place where I have this case and open up the mooting template file. So this will be a file you download from our website, and you can open it with Casido in the File menu. The first thing you might want to do with this is to save it as something else. So if you go to the File menu and save case as, I can save that as Ross's moot round 1 bundle, for example. Give it a sensible name. If you're the junior appellant or whatever it is, call it the junior appellant, so that when you get to the end and you give it to the judge, they're going to know your role in proceedings. Give it a sensible name. There's probably a format for that somewhere in the moot rules. What are we looking at here in this example bundle? Well, if you go to the top, you've got a table of contents document. Now, this is actually a document generated by Casido, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And that tells you what's in your bundle. Then we've got a bunch of folders over here on the left. And inside the first one, we have essentially the guide to mooting. So to bring in the new document, you go down here to this import files button. It's actually there in the desk space, but all of this button on the top. And if I click import files, I can then go to wherever I want and import a document. So let's, I've got a bunch of documents in here. Let's bring in, what's a good example? Let's bring in a skeleton argument. So I'm going to bring in this skeleton argument, and that's going to drop into my desk space down here. And I can now choose where to put it. Obviously, if I brought in the moot problem, I would drag it up and I would put it in the moot problem folder. And I can view it there. If I wanted to put it in the skeleton argument folder, I could drag it down and drop it into the skeleton argument folder. And I could then take this placeholder file and delete it. So once that's obviously, I'll bring in the moot problem straight away so I can read it. And then I will bring in my authorities as I solve the problem. So speaking notes, again, that's something I would write and add in there. And mostly what you're going to be adding to your bundle is authority. So let's look at how you do that and how you deal with authority and marking up an example. Again, you start by importing files. So let's go here to here, and I've got some authority that I want to import into this case file. So I can select a bunch of files here. And those appear down in the desk space as usual. And what I've got here is I've got one piece of legislation. I'm afraid it's the Taxing Act. I'm going to put that in my tab A folder. And I'm going to delete the placeholder. So now I've got tab A, my first authority, and what I'm going to is double click on that folder name and rename it FA 2003 Part 3. And it's a piece of legislation, so there we go. And what I next want to do is pick out the important bits, the actual bits I'm going to refer to. So if my skeleton argument refers to, let's say, section 44A, what I will do is I will first of all drag this tab button. So I'm now going to talk you through annotations in Tuxedo. The first thing, you take this tab button and you drag it onto the page and release it. And when you release it, it automatically drops a bookmark on the page. And you can see over here in the index, underneath the document, I now have a bookmark. And if I type, and what I would name that is I might name that, because it's tab A, I might name it A1, and then I might give it a name as well. And you can see there how now I have a tab for section A1. The next thing I might do if I was going to be referring a judge to this section, so I've now put in a reference so I can easily refer someone to. The next thing I'm going to do is actually highlight the section I'm interested in. So if I select the text, you get this highlight control here, and you can pick a color. So it's called bit that way. If I click it, I want to change the color, I can just click it again, change it to green, change it back to yellow, change it to red, just get rid of it, re-highlight it. So you might want to do that. Highlight the section. The other thing you might want to do is add a comment. And that's this tab at the bottom right. You can drag onto the page and add a comment and add, apply to this case. Or whatever it is you want to say about that. I think probably in the context of mooting, this isn't going to be so useful for you. Certainly it's not the kind of thing you're going to be wanting to give the judge. But it might be useful when you're doing your research to add notes. And we can go on and in this particular bit of legislation, we could add as many of these as we wanted. So we could add another tab A2. We're not putting tab in there. A2, section 46. And we can, we could highlight a section there as well. However we wanted. And we can add as many of those as you want. A3, section 48. And what that's going to mean is when I come to making my submissions and I turn the judge to, if you turn to tab A2 in the bundle, all they're going to have to do is click on this little button here and they will go to exactly what you want them to see. So it works the same way for cases. So here we've got a folder for case authority. And we've got tab B, the second authority. What I'm going to do is put a case in there. I'm going to get rid of that placeholder. delete that. And I'm going to copy the name of that into here so that it's in the folder name. You actually don't need these folders. The template project suggests you use folders for each authority, for each tab, as it were. I might be minded to put these outside and just call that tab B. That's up to you. But in the template, we've got them inside the folder, so I'll go with that now. And again, it's the same principle. You've got the case, and you might. I mean, I often, for example, put a bookmark on the head note, which can be quite useful to a judge if you're referring to a case. But again, probably what you're going to be doing is finding the specific passage you want to refer to, say it's paragraph 40, and dropping a bookmark saying B1 paragraph 40. And you might drop another one, B2 paragraph 50. Again, highlight the section you're going to want the judge to actually read out. And we can then, obviously, we're going to want to add more than that. So let's add another case. So we've got more than one case. What we're going to do to stick with this same arrangement is create a new folder, call it tab C. We're going to, this case is called Martland. And we're going to put that case inside there. And we're going to drop it into the case authorities. And let's get another one now whilst we're at it, tab D, RFC 2012. Obviously, you'll have different and probably not just boring cases because it won't be a tax moot. And we can then create a tab for all these documents, and we can add the actual references we want wherever we want them. So that would be tab C1, whatever it is. You don't have to put anything more than just C1 on there if you want. C2, etc. C3, and we can put these references in. We can highlight if we want to, and you can see how this case is now beginning to look like a bunch of references we can make. You may find obviously lots of your cases will only have one reference. The same would go for persuasive authority, although what we should now note, of course, is that this in the example bundle is tab C. It's no longer tab C because tab C is a case. So having added our cases, we'll rename that tab E, and we'll bring in whatever authority it is, a book or whatever it is we want to put in there. And you can see now how broadly we've got where we want to go with our authorities in the bundle, and we can easily refer to the passage we want to refer to. And when we do, the judge will be able to click a button and jump to the right place. So that gets us there. I'm just going to pause there and deal with a few questions. One is, how do I remove something from the desk space I've accidentally added? So you can simply select and delete it. So if I bring in a file, let's say I bring in this file again, I've already got that case in my desk space. You can just select it and delete it, and it will delete it. You can equally move stuff back from the bundle into the desk space, and you can move them back again. These things it's a very fluid interaction between these two spaces. I sometimes create a folder called trash here, and I put things that I don't want but aren't completely committed to getting rid of in a trash folder. Again, it's a flexible environment, so you can move your files around as and what you like. What else might you want to do? Well, I've shown you how to add bookmarks, and that's very useful. I've shown you how to add comments. The other and highlights. The other key tool for linking things up is the cross-referencing tool, which is this tab in the top right-hand corner. So if you go to my skeleton, which is probably slightly longer looking than the actual skeletons you'll be doing for your mood, what you might want to do is have a paragraph in your skeleton that refers to a case. Let's find one in my skeleton that does. So we've got this case application of Martland, and we've got a reference to the case here. Happens to be a case we have in the bundle. So if I was in this part of my skeleton, I'd reference a case. What I'm also going to want to do to help the judge is to drop a cross-reference. And so I do that by dropping this link onto the page, and that adds one end of a link on the right-hand side. The other end of the link waits for me up in the top right-hand corner. And so I can now go to the Martland case, and I might want to go, in fact, to the specific bit I want to say the first reference, and I can drop this other end of the link on the page there. And that gives me a two-way link between my skeleton, where I reference the case, and the case, or a particular paragraph of the case that I'm referencing. And that's particularly useful if you're in two-screen mode. So you may be muting, you may have your skeleton in one window, and what you can do with these links is you can drag them across into the other page and navigate to the other end of the case. So if you've got a bunch of links on your page, you can add those to the various sections. And that means you can very easily bring up cross-references to the material you're referring to here on the right-hand side. And if you want to change where a link goes to, you can just delete one end of it. You delete that end of it, and then you can reattach it. Let's say you want to reattach it to this part of the case on there, and so you've now got links that will take you to the right places. So that's quite a nice tool. I sort of imagine in the moots you're doing actually the tabs here are going to be your primary method of referring a judge to something, because you're not going to have too many of them. They're going to be able to see them down the side of the page here, and you'll simply be able to say if you go to tab C2, they'll be able to jump straight to that. So that's probably your primary method, but the links are also quite useful sometimes. And they can, in fact, what you can do sometimes, for example, is you could link to the next paragraph. So you could push a link there and then go to C2 and then add a link to C3. And this might be if you wanted to, for example, take into a paragraph and then go, and then if you turn to if you go down to paragraph 21 of that case, and then if you go down to paragraph 26 of that case, and you can jump through a decision like that. It can also be a way to use things. They're very flexible. So that's how you build a bundle. The only other thing I wanted to show you is the table of contents. So the example bundle creates a table of contents up here. The template already includes a table of contents. And this is a document created by Casido. So what I'm going to do is actually delete that one now, just so I can show you how they're made from scratch. This button down on the bottom left creates a table of contents, and that will put it into the desk space for you. And if I click on that, you'll see that all this shows me is what's in the trash, because it's in the desk space, and these table of contents respond to where you are. If I drag it up into my bundle proper, and I regenerate it, it will give me a list of everything in my bundle. And so you can see I've got a folder for my case authority, etc., 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 and it ignores these subfolders, so that's quite nice. If you can use these in various ways. They've got links to the various entries, so you can use this to link to the skeleton or to the legislation or whichever passage you want. You've also got some customization tools in the top right-hand side. So I might want to, for example, include subfolders in my table of contents. That will include subfolders. I might want to include bookmarks. If I've added bookmarks, I might want to see my tabs, and particularly for the way you're going to be using tab bookmarks for tab references, that might be a good way of doing it. You can go further and, in fact, show your highlights as well. And this really is getting less into the sort of mooting and core advocacy use of these table of contents and more into the research analysis usage. I use these, for example, whenever I do read cases and such like. I mark up cases, and in my case folder, I create a table of contents like this, and it's a very good way of reviewing what I thought was of interest in a particular case or authority or book, whatever it is I'm reading. We can add comments too. So these are quite a flexible tool for for doing things. And as I say, if you move them about, they actually even respond to what you're doing. So you put it into the case authority, will just give you the cases. So a flexible tool there, but I would thought probably you can just regenerate it and you use the standard one and not worry too much about it. So that what we've got now, I hope you'll see, looks something like the example file. So if I open that example file, the one that you can download off the website, you'll see broadly we're in the same place. We've got the table of contents at the top, which is listing everything we've got here in our folders. I'm going to regenerate that, and it will look a bit more sensible because it ignores the subfolders. We've got our moot problem, which we can mark up, and you may put markup on that. We've got the skeleton argument, so this is probably going to look more like your skeleton arguments than the one I was previously showing you. And you can see how on this skeleton, where there's a reference to the Land Registration Act, there's also a link to it, and a link to the very specific part they're referring to, section 29, and that matter's highlighted. So if the judge is primarily reading your skeleton argument and they're following you through that, they can very easily bring these resources up here. My first submission starts with section 29, so there it is. Schedule 3, para 2. I then refer IB National and CAN. There's the case. Link lending. There's the case, etc. So you can easily take them to those cases. And equally, you can say, well, if you turn to tab E1, you can jump very easily to tab E1, whether or not you're using 1 or 2 buttons. So I hope that makes sense. 2 final things. I mentioned search already, but of course search is going to be really key at some points. You can just type in here a search feature and you'll get it. Okay. That will highlight all the occasions of the search result. And we've got pagination is the other thing. So what you'll probably want to do is just turn pagination on, which is this button in the bottom left-hand corner. And you can see when I turn it off, it puts the page numbers there in the bottom right-hand corner of each page. And they will just run sequentially through all your documents, which is probably the way you want to do it for these moots. You can, there's quite a lot of options on pagination, which you can look into on our website if you want. But for now, I would just keep that turned on. The last thing is if you want to export this to a PDF, there's an export to PDF option, and that will allow you to kick the case out to a PDF. Should you, for some reason, want to have a PDF backup, or for some reason somebody wants it to look at this in another format. So quite useful. Let me just check the questions to see if there's anything else I can touch on. What did Orange Switch do? I've touched on that. That's the pagination toggle. How do we share a bundle together? Well, sharing a bundle is as simple as copying the file. So if I go to my Finder window and I go to Casido, and you can see in my UCL mooting folder, I've got the authorities and things like that, but I've also got a bunch of case files. So this one, Ross's Moot Round 1 bundle.case, is the file we just created. That has within it all of these documents. That is the file I would send to the judge or whoever I needed to send it to for my moot. You can see this one with only a few documents in it is 7.5 megabytes, so a reasonable size. They can get big. I mean, I have 5,000 page bundles in Casido that are 200 megabytes, but you won't be going anywhere near that, I think. So they should be fairly easy to share. I store mine on Dropbox or OneDrive as well, so if you've got shared storage that way, different people can access them. You will get conflicts if you're both using them at the same time, but as long as you manage that yourselves in the usual way, you'll be fine. There's a question, again, another question about the pagination toggle, so the page numbering. So if you want to have page numbers on your bundle, Casido will apply them automatically, and that's this orange switch in the bottom left-hand corner. And you can see when you turn pagination on, you get this go-to page. entry up here, so I can say, let's go to page 56, and it will take me to page 56. So again, probably not the default method of referring the judge to something in the case of a moot, because that's not the nature of mooting. But I mean, I would often refer judges to a page in the bundle. I'd say, well, if you turn to page 120, and they might want to use the go to page feature to go there. So that's the way pagination works. And if you turn that off, you don't get that option because there are no page numbers. You can customize, as I say, pagination quite a lot in Casito, but I'm not going to get involved with that today. I've got a question. Why are my files in the desk space and not under the box above like yours? That will be a question simply of you haven't yet moved them up there. So if I go to File, Casito, New Case, as before, I'm going to be asked to save it somewhere. And let's call it Ross's Moot Bundle 2. It's completely empty. So this is what an empty case file looks like, nothing in it. When I choose to import documents, whatever they are, start with this authority thing, because I've got them, they're going to always show up in the desk space. If I want them to be in my index, you can actually do everything in the desk space that you can do up here. All the functionality remains the same. I can mark them up, I can add bookmarks, no problem. It's all going to work the same way. But the idea is that this is where things appear, and this is your unorganized space, and the index is your final space. So what I do is I will drag them up into that space and put them in the order I want to put them in up here. So the index space, as we call it, is the place you build, and you can create folders and call them. I always have a cases folder. I always have a legislation folder, and you can put those folders in there, and you can rename them whatever you like, and you can move them around. So it's a very and this comes about, obviously, you're going to have a go with Casito for your mooting, and hopefully you'll find it works well. It's not just for mooting and advocacy at all. In fact, my primary use of it is for analysis, writing opinions, and that sort of thing. Where and really, I dreamt it up in the school context. The idea that you've got an assignment, you've been given a bunch of documents, lecture notes, the problem question or whatever. You have to go away and find a bunch of authorities, case law, bits from books. You've got to pull them all together and write an answer. Because he is fantastic for that. I would bring in my lecture notes. I would bring in the problem question. I would bring in anything I had to read for that assignment. I would bring it into Casito and read it there. And then what you end up with is, for that assignment, you have a single file, a Casito file, that has all the information you're working on in one place. All your markup is in one place. You can organize it exactly how you want it to. So it's good for not just for mooting, but for other things. We've got a question. How do I add links to the hyperlink function? So links are a question. Let me show you again. I'll do it in one window so it's easier. I've got a document here, and let's say I want to link this page to this page. And it can be any pages in your bundle I want to link. Front page of Martland to the front page of this case I've given a silly name to. So it doesn't matter where I start. What I do is I drag a link onto the document and I release it. And that creates one end of the link. The other end stays up here. And this already works, actually. If I go, I can double click on that and it will take me back there. But then if I go to where I want the other end of the link to be, and I drag this end onto the page, I now have a two-way link between those pages. And I can double click on it and it will jump between the two places. If I've got two windows open, I can use a link by dragging it into the other window. So hopefully that clarifies that. Second question, how do you add a document to a subfolder? So I've got here a folder. I've got a folder here for cases. We might call it case authority. And I want to add a tab folder underneath it. Well, I create a new folder down here in the desk, in these buttons down here. Hit new folder, the middle one, and we'll create a folder. I'm going to call it tab B, and that's just now an empty folder. Let's drag that up and put it in my case authority folder and put the case inside it. So simple drag and drop in the usual way, and then if I double click the name, I can call that tab B. So yeah, you can create as many folders as you like. You can put folders inside folders inside folders. So again, very flexible there. Another question I see here is how do I export the file as a single PDF? It's this button down in the bottom left. There's 3 buttons. See, there's a print button, which will send it to the printer. That's a bit legacy. You probably don't want to do that. But the one next to it is the export to PDF button, and that will just export everything up in the top left to PDF. If you click that, it will process this document. It's fairly fast. There you go, it's done, and it will ask you to save that PDF somewhere. Why are there 2 windows, green and purple? So this is something that actually some people don't quite pick up on straight away. You have one bundle in Casido, but you can choose if you want to. If you're on a small screen, and when I originally used Casido for the first year mostly on an 11-inch MacBook Air, where there is simply not room for reading 2 documents side by side. So you can work with Casido in a single screen, and that probably makes sense. But it's great if you've got enough screen space to look at 2 pages at once, and you do that by opening up a second window in the right-hand corner. And what that does is it gives you, it's not like opening up a new document or opening up the document again. It's just another view of the same document. And to demonstrate that, if I highlight a passage of this document, it pops up on the other window. These are the same thing. And it's just a great way of being able to view things side by side. So often you might be looking at a piece of legislation, and there might be something interesting, and a case might refer to it, and you can look at these 2 things side by side. As I say, in the context of mooting or advocacy generally, I would tend to use that by having my skeleton in one window, which are all my speaking notes, if that's how you're working. Speaking notes in one window, and I would have that linked. I would then bring up documents next to it, so I could always have both in front of me at all times. And it's great if you put cross references from your skeleton to the authorities you want to refer. It's great. It's a really hassle-free way of saying, oh, well, there's the point in my skeleton. I say it, I use the link, and I can then, quote the passage directly. So it's going to be a very trouble-free way of doing sort of legal advocacy. Someone wants to look back at the contents page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the example bundle for this one. How do they add different sections to the contents page? So if we go to the contents page, they're all called table of contents to start with. You could actually change this to Ross's, Ross's docs, whatever, and that will rename it for you. And the default sort of display for a table of contents is simply to give you folder names, and only the top level folder, not subfolders, and documents. And that's because that's a nice simple way of breaking up a bundle. So you can see here, although we've got all these tab A, tab B folders, they don't show up, which is quite nice. And it's a simple, clean table of contents that's useful for someone wanting to know what's in your bundle. But on the top right-hand corner here, you've got these 3 little buttons. And if you click those, they give you 4 more buttons. And each of these is just a way of adding more information to this. So the first one gives you bookmarks. So if I click that, it will reprocess that document and show it to you with all the bookmarks I've added. So again, in your context, actually, for mooting, that's quite a handy document. You've now got every case divided into sections, and you've got the specific tabs. So it might be that a judge can just have this in front of them, and they can sit there when you refer to tab A1, they can pull it across and see tab 1, tab C1, they can pull it across and see tab C1. So that could be quite a good use for mooting of this table of contents. If you want to add more, you can add comments. I haven't added many comments in this bundle. There may be no comments in this bundle. So, oh yeah, no, there's a couple, and there's a comment, etc. So you can add comments. You can add subfolders, and that, as you'll see, will give you all those tab file folders that to me, those are just in this context not particularly helpful. And you can add highlights too, which is really then you're well into the sort of space of analysis and trying to figure out what it's all about, rather than. But it could be. I can see how this could be a good advocacy tool if you simply got a bunch of sections you want to refer people to. How do you put a document under a folder? So let me take you through that again, because obviously that's crucial. If I go to File, Recent Cases, and jump back into my Moot bundle, it's a nice simple one. Let's bring in a new file. Bring the same one again. If I hold it over a folder, it will go into. You can see this one is the same level. If I want to put it not in one, sort of hover it on the top half, and it will go outside the folder. If I move it up, it will drop in. So you can sort of see where they're going to go just by hovering around. You'll get the hang of it if you play with the drag and drop. I mean, like all drag and drop, it's got its own idiosyncrasies. But it's fairly self-explanatory. You just drag these cases until they're inside the folder. And you'll see that a folder that doesn't have anything in it doesn't have the little triangle next door. So this folder doesn't have anything in it. If I drag this case below, it's under the folder, but it's not in the folder. If I drag it up and hold it on top, it will jump into the folder, and now it's inside, which means I can minimize it in the usual way. So I hope that's helpful, rather than being too confusing. Casino is at heart very simple. It's at heart very flexible, and I encourage you to sort of get comfortable with it, certainly before you go into the Moot. But have a play, use it for different things, and see how it works. Because, as I say, it's a very simple and useful tool for lots of purposes. We will, if you need further questions, I totally anticipate you guys going to be mooting is a very stressful process, and we don't want this to be stressful either. So do get in touch with us at Casino if you've got any questions at all about how to use this. We will be producing some videos. There's already a lot of videos online taking you through these basic procedures, but we can do more. So if you've got specific questions, ask them, and we will. If you've got a question, probably somebody else does too, and we can address those with specific demonstration videos and/or posts that we can share with the whole mooting contingent. So I'm going to finish there, and have a play, and let us know how you get on, and good luck with the Moot. I'm glad it's not me doing it.